So for visualizing cultures, we created 3 units. 2 of them are on Koizumi, and the third one is on the 8 artists at the same time who did also 100 views of Tokyo.
Right.
So just so you understand how the units work here, in the first unit we have an essay by Jim Ulek on this, and visual narratives. And we're going into the visual narratives now, what we call 18 sites and 18 pathways, and look at how those work and how they intersect. If you look at our menu here that we created, you can roll over a key graphic. So we have bridging the city, infrastructure, parks, city lights, things like that, women. So why don't we go down a couple of these and just get impressions. They're basically, it's a way of putting the images together digitally that shows you images that are similar. You can see, make conclusions, get impressions about that topic through the visual pathway. So Jim was talking about Tokyo as a water and bridges being very important. And this is a wide variety of images, of types of bridges.
It's interesting to me how, looking at bridges as a whole here, Koizumi moves between this very modern constructivist idea where he's fascinated with structure. And that's very true in America and Europe with photographers at this time, as well as painters. And then he reverts a little bit to something slightly more soft and traditional. He's experimenting with 2 different visions.
Well, there, in an example like that, you see the very traditional scene versus a very modern scene.
You know, you mentioned, Jim, that the city is just full of bridges, and that was a favorite theme of the late Tokugawa period, the pre-modern period, woodblock artists. And of course, what he does is show us how many bridges there are. Totally different vision of the bridges suddenly. And he's really departed from the past while staying within that past paradigm of subjects.
And that actually plays out on the ground as Tokyo is being reconstructed after the earthquake. Because the former mayor, the Minister of Home Affairs, Goto Shinpei, who was in charge of reconstructing the city in its aftermath, tried to think of himself as a Georges Haussmann of his time. So Georges Haussmann being the famous French politician who worked with Napoleon III to raise the city and turn Paris into a modern city. Goto fancied himself in that way, and he tried to reconstruct sort of the city's infrastructure, major bridges, roads, connecting points, and to some degree that happened. But as they tried to do so, they also met resistance on the ground with people who actually owned property, people who didn't want to change the cities. And so there's a degree to which a new planned city emerges to an extent, but it meets resistance and the old city remains. And in fact, to this day, there are neighborhoods in Tokyo that you can walk through where the buildings are completely new, usually post-World War II, but the actual structuring of a city, the alleyways and things like that, some of which you can actually trace all the way back to the Edo period. So there's a way in which the earthquake enables a new construction, but there was a definite limit to that, and perhaps obliquely sort of signaled in that mixed metaphor we see in the images.